Code appears right in the middle of Mamushi's invasion of Konoha and he kills Nishi. Yeah, that's at least a short spoiler for chapter 28. But hold on, honestly, I'm a bit hesitant to say this. Still, take a look first and decide for yourself. Should we consider this scene to be real or just a hoax? Because if we refer to the official Boruto Naruto website, then honestly, what you just saw is indeed a hoax. But actually, there are a few topics within it that I think are still quite interesting. However, once again, it's a hoax, fake. Yeah, I know, it really looks legit and official, but since our reference is the official site, we'll have to call it fake. Still, if you're wondering why I decided to continue discussing it, even though it's a hoax, well, that's where things get interesting. So yeah, aside from the predictions and all that, I actually have a clue, or rather, a scenario of how Code might appear. In the previous video, I already made a short prediction for chapter 28, but that was in general. And this time, for the next 8 minutes, we're going to focus entirely on Code and several characters who will likely be in direct conflict with him, like Mamushi, Jura, or even Kashin Koji, especially how the scenario for Code's appearance might unfold. First, based on the final outcome of Code's appearance and Jura destroying its arm, I think the most logical scenario is for it to regenerate its arm. And even though Code is literally not human, one of the most relevant ways to regenerate its arm, in my opinion, is by using Tsumeaka's body, or claw grime. If this sounds crazy and hard to believe, you should know that there is a conceptual similarity between Tsumeaka and White Zetsu. In short, the similarity isn't a general one. We know that White Zetsu is the result of Hashirama Cell and Shinju. They originated from humans who were absorbed by the God Tree in the Kaguya era. So, in essence, they are humans who have been mutated by Shinju Chakra. Meanwhile, Claw Grime, or Tsumeaka, is a new creature that emerged from the fragments of the Ten Tails in the Boruto era, evolving thanks to the Claw Mark code. At this point, we can conclude that Claw Grime, or Tsumeaka, still has a blood connection to Code. However, beyond that, the fact is that they are modern manifestations of Shinju Chakra, not the result of human experiments like Zetsu. However, in terms of similarity and biological function, despite their different origins, both possess parasitic functions and regenerative abilities. Is that correct? White Zetsu can repair the body or cover fatal wounds, even merging itself into another body. A simple and easy to remember example is when it helped Obito survive. As for Claw Grime itself, they also have a cellular structure similar to Shinju tissue, which theoretically can heal or regrow organs depending on how the energy is absorbed. So, in terms of function, both can serve as material for regeneration, even with extreme injuries like Code. In this context, can humans or cyborgs regenerate through Tsumeaka? Theoretically, yes, it is very possible, because both White Zetsu and Claw Grime carry Shinju cells containing the DNA of the Chakra Tree of Life. If those cells are combined with a human or cyborg, then that body can accelerate extreme regeneration, even recovering from fatal injuries, as I mentioned earlier. So in conclusion, to reveal Code's scene after several chapters with no signs or information about his movements, it is very likely that he will use Tsumeaka to regenerate his arm. But in your opinion, is it possible that Ikemoto will let Code remain with only one arm? I think that since he has Tsumeaka under his control, using their bodies to regenerate his arm is still quite reasonable. But for some reason, after seeing this image, I have a theory that supports the scenario where Code will become strong. But disclaimer, apart from the fact that this is fan-made and not original, Chapter 13 is also a consideration. In short, Koji explains that there is a future timeline where Boruto and Sarada die at the hands of Kawaki, and Code, with his overwhelming power and abilities, manages to defeat Kawaki and feed him to the Ten Tails. Now, at this point, there is certainly a connection with the previous theory about Tsumeaka as a method to regenerate Code's wounds. I mean, Kashin Koji at that point did not explain that Code became strong because he had become a new Otsutsuki, or even merged into Shinju or the Divine Tree human. But in a different version. In a worst-case scenario, have you ever thought about whether there would be side effects on Code's body if he used Tsumeaka's body to regenerate his wounds? Regardless of whether Code is human or not, at least if his body doesn't have the capacity, or if he absorbs a sufficient amount of Tsumeaka or Claw Grime, it seems reasonable that he would transform like the image you see here, right? That means, would Ikemoto leave Code with one damaged arm or not? If the scenario is as I just described, I think we can all agree. If Code absorbs or uses Tsumeaka's body too much, It will have such a significant side effect that it could even change his body to resemble Tsumeka with a tail. But if I may ask, if Code ends up transforming like this, is it a new form of Otsutsuki, or is it the result of an incompatible body or a side effect of absorbing Tsumeka to the point that his form resembles theirs? What do you guys think? And that also means that if Code transforms like that, then one of his goals of becoming a new Otsutsuki will be easier for him to achieve on his own than by relying on Jura, like by devouring Jura's Togodama or something like that. But again, what do you guys think about this case? Oh yeah. The second scenario is to monitor Konoha and wait for the perfect timing. The goal is to find an opportunity to absorb Mamushi. Yeah, I know at least one interesting scenario is to see how Code waits for the perfect timing to gain his power. Besides the fact that Mamushi's invasion of Konoha won't go smoothly and won't be as simple as Kashin Koji says, one outside intervention that could mess this up is Code. In other words, if Code doesn't use Tsumeka's body to regenerate his arm, then Mamushi is one of the ideal choices, either to regenerate his arm or even to increase his power. So, in essence, to guess how a scenario for Code's appearance would play out, it would be to hide in Konoha and also in the midst of Mamushi's invasion. But what do you guys think? What and how will Ikemoto reveal Code's next move? And will Code appear in Chapter 28? However, as a final conclusion, the scene you just saw is fake. And for the Chapter 28 Part 1 spoiler, it will likely be released around the 14th. Oh yeah, one more thing. Continuing with a theory that is still mysterious and full of questions about Jura not wanting to take Matsuri or Ryu's Thorn Soul, there is a rather interesting theory that it is actually because they are the incarnations of the young Ten Tail. In other words, as a leader and also the incarnation of the Ten Tails itself, Jura has access to all the data and information from various Shinju. Or simply put, he is trying to gather all that information into one Thorn Soul in order to create a new chakra fruit, but this time without having to eat an Otsutsuki. Therefore, he only chooses shinobi who are truly strong and worthy to be part of this grand plan. Since Matsuri and Ryu don't fall into that category, Jura chooses to ignore them. But whether it's Hidari, aka Sasuke, or not, I think we'll get the answer sooner or later. Oh yeah, shout out to Pei. If you have another more interesting theory, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to use the hashtag NIM. Thank you for watching. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye-bye. Dadabayo.